So I've received a couple of different messages from students regarding how to write a calculated query in Microsoft Access. All right, so I'm just going to give you a quick example of that today. And what I have here is a simple customer database that involves a loan amount, an interest rate, a term, and we're going to calculate the PMT, or the monthly payment for that. All right, so let me start out by creating a query, and you can see here I have a loan amount, I have an interest rate, and I have a term. So I have all the details. So I'll go over here to my query design, and I'll start a new query. I'll pull that up here. So it's query 1, and the only table I have in this database is a customer table. So I'll go ahead and add that, and I'll close that off. And in my query, I'll put the ID. Actually, I'll populate with everything: ID, loan amount, interest rate, and term. And then let's create our calculated query over here. And what we need to do is use these three values, and we'll go ahead and figure out the monthly payment for that. Now this is, if you think back, we've been doing a lot with PMT, and it goes back to chapter 2 of Excel. So if you get stuck, please review that, because it's going to be very similar between the two. So here I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select the build, and I right click. When I did that, I right click on where I want to put this. I'll say build, and that brings up the expression builder, right? What I'm going to do with that is to start with, in a spreadsheet we start with equals, but here what I'm going to do is I need to give that particular column a title. And so I will call this particular title of this, I'll call it this monthly payment. I'm going to put a colon there. And then let's start building this. Alright, so I'm going to use my PMT function. So as soon as you see I get this smart text that comes up, so I'll say PMT. Alright, and then I'm going to put a parentheses, and it asks me, just like it does in Excel, the rate, the number of periods, and the principal, alright, or the present value. So the rate's going to be, and again it's just a matter of deciphering how do we get the rate from Access. And my rate, if you look down below here, is in the customer table, and it's under loan amount. It's a little bit tricky to combine those two. Alright, so I'm going to say, and I always start with these brackets, and I'll say loan amount, whoops, excuse me, customer, and I'm getting smart text again, so customer, and then I have to say dot, and then again I got my brackets, and I want to use the loan, or in this case I want the, what do I want first, interest rate, and then I'm going to take that value that's in there and I have to divide it by 12 because we're doing a monthly payment. Alright, and now we do the same thing with our term. So I say show me the table customer, again note the bracket, note the syntax, okay, how do you speak the language, it's the syntax, and then a dot. And then we go down here and say, well, I want the term. And then I'm going to multiply that by 12, just like we do in Excel. And then lastly, I need to make this negative, so I'm going to say -1 times, what's the present value, or in this case, how much money do we owe? And again, that's why we put a -1 in front of that. And so I go back to that same table, customer table, and I say, give me the loan amount. Alright, hopefully we've done everything correctly here. So I hit OK. And then let's go ahead and view the results. And it looks like I got something there, but anytime you see those pound symbols, that means that my column isn't wide enough. Alright, and so there I have data. It looks kind of correct. If I take a $10,000 loan at 5% interest over 5 years, well, about 188, that sounds pretty reasonable. $188, but this is miserable to read. So let's do some correcting here. First, interest rates, let's display those. Go in here and let's go to my properties. You might not be able to see that there, but I right click and I hit properties and it brings up this box. And I want to format this as, well, let's look at all of our choices here. I want it as a %. And then decimal places, I'm going to do 2 decimal places. You do 1 or 2 decimal places. I know I have one where at least there's going to be 1 decimal place. Hit the right number there. Boom, okay. And then let me do the same thing over here with monthly payment, and I leave that properties up there. And that one I want to show up as currency. So I go down, I find currency, I pop that in there. And with currency, I don't need to note decimal places. Open view, and there it is. Okay, so some points here, some teaching points. One, syntax can be difficult. All right, and sometimes we know what we want to say, but we're not able to say it appropriately. And I'll make this bigger here so you can all see it. Okay, so that could be problematic. All right, so how do we say this? How do we pull a value out of our database? And we have to use both the table and the notation in Microsoft Access. Is it use brackets, the table name, then a dot, and then brackets, and then the field that we're using. All right, PMT function, you've been using that a long time. But in Access, instead of saying equals like we do in a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet, we give it a name, and we say whatever that name is that we want to give it. In this case, I name this particular calculation monthly payment, and then I put a colon to indicate that's the end of the name and the start of the formula.